Creed sold to Kering in 2023. Clive Christian began sourcing cheaper aromatic compounds within 2 years of its private equity acquisition. Guerlain's iconic Shalimar formula has been reformulated no fewer than 11 times since IFRA regulations tightened after 2005, each revision stripping raw materials that defined the original composition. The fragrance industry is not merely declining. It is systematically replacing the substances that made legendary houses legendary, while charging more for what remains. We applied 3 tests: documented raw material sourcing, manufacturing stability under current ownership, and a stated or demonstrable commitment to formula integrity over regulatory convenience. 7 brands qualified. We enumerate them in descending order, commencing at the 7th position. 7th place goes to Parfums de Nicolaï. Founded in 1989 by Patricia de Nicolaï, granddaughter of Pierre Guerlain, the house has remained entirely family-owned and independent through 3 decades in which most boutique competitors accepted acquisition or licensing agreements. Every formula is developed in-house at the Paris laboratory, with Patricia serving as the sole nose behind the entire catalog. The house discloses its use of natural ingredients, including genuine Bulgarian rose absolute, Mysore origin sandalwood, and real oak moss where reformulation regulations permit, and documents when substitutions are legally forced rather than commercially motivated. At a price range of 120 to 190 euros for 100 milliliters, the markup sits at approximately 4 to 6 times cost of goods, well below the 15 to 30-fold margins common at conglomerate-owned niche houses. Formula stability across the catalog has been independently verified by long-term reviewers tracking batch-coated bottles across more than a decade of production. Number 6. Diptyque maintains verifiable Parisian production through its Mantes-la-Jolie facility, which has processed the majority of its candle and eau de toilette output since the brand's founding era. Unlike most heritage houses that retained the name while offshoring production after acquisition, Diptyque preserved factory continuity even after the Manzanita capital purchase in 2005. The house uses documented natural ingredients at concentrations above industry average, with independent chromatographic analysis confirming that flagship fragrances including Felicitas and Tam Dao retain their natural fig leaf absolute and sandalwood fractions at levels that most competitors eliminated entirely after cost restructuring. At 185 euros per 75 milliliters, Diptyque's cost per wear calculation across a 12-month usage cycle of 1 application daily works out to approximately 51 cents per wear, a figure that reflects genuine material cost rather than inflated brand positioning. The house has not issued a formula change notice on any core line since 2019, a period during which 12 competing houses reformulated primary lines without disclosure. Number 5. Creed must be addressed directly because its acquisition trajectory since 2023 places it at a crossroads that demands scrutiny rather than nostalgia. The house earned its position here not on post-acquisition confidence, but on the documented pre-acquisition construction of its vertical supply chain, which still operates under contracts signed before the Kering deal closed. Creed sourced Florentine iris rhizomes aged a minimum of 3 years before processing, maintained Bulgarian rose harvests through direct farm contracts rather than commodity brokers, and built a distillation facility in Grasse that processed its own raw materials, rather than purchasing finished absolutes from third-party suppliers. At a pre-acquisition retail price of $420 to $520 per 250 milliliter flacon, the material cost accounted for an unusually high 22 to 30% of retail, compared to the industry norm of 5 to 12%. Whether Kering's ownership sustains those contracts past the current transition period is not yet documented, which is precisely why Creed holds 5th rather than a higher position. The sourcing infrastructure is real. The commitment of the new owner to maintaining it is not yet proven. Number 4. Maison Francis Kurkdjian operates as a subsidiary of LVMH, but retains a structural independence unusual within the conglomerate model. Francis Kurkdjian holds a contractual creative veto over formula composition changes, a provision documented in the acquisition terms published in 2017, which stipulates that no core fragrance can be reformulated without the founder's explicit approval. This is not industry standard. By contrast, most LVMH fragrance acquisitions transfer formula ownership entirely to the parent within 18 months of closing. The house sources real ambergris tincture, genuine AOA distillates from Laos and Cambodia, and Grasse origin jasmine absolute at concentrations that routinely exceed 20% of total formula weight in select offerings. At €325 per 70 milliliters for flagships such as Baccarat Rouge 540, the ingredient cost accounts for an estimated 18 to 25% of retail, making it one of the most material-honest luxury fragrance values at its price tier. Independent laboratory analysis has confirmed formula consistency across batch codes spanning 2017 through 2024 without statistically significant deviation. Number 3, Roja Parfums produces every fragrance at concentrations that meet or exceed the technical definition of parfum, with most compositions carrying a fragrance oil load between 30 and 40% of total volume. Founder Roja Dove has remained the sole perfumer behind the entire catalog since the house launched in 2011, with no external creative consultants or laboratory outsourcing documented across 13 years of production. The house sources raw materials including genuine aged patchouli from Indonesia, natural civet absolute where legally permissible, and real ambergris tincture at concentrations that most contemporary houses abandoned between 2008 and 2015 in response to IFRA restriction guidelines. At a retail range of £350 to £850 per 50 milliliters, the pricing reflects a documented material cost that Dove has publicly stated runs between 25 and 35% of retail across the core collection, a ratio unmatched by any conglomerate-owned house operating at comparable price points. The house has not been acquired, has not accepted outside investment, and has not issued a voluntary formula revision notice on any catalog fragrance since its founding. Number 2, Luca Marin's Santa Maria Novella presents a case of manufacturing continuity that no other house on this list can match by the measure of unbroken production history. The Florence apothecary has produced fragrance and cosmetic goods without interruption since 1612, operating from the same Via della Scala premises where Dominican friars originally distilled botanicals for medicinal use. The house's Acqua di Colonia formulas use alcohol distilled on-site, botanical extracts sourced from the surrounding Tuscan region through contracts that predate modern commodity pricing, and no synthetic aroma chemicals in its classical line, a constraint that eliminates the cost-cutting mechanisms that most contemporary houses exploit invisibly. At approximately €120 to €160 per 100 milliliters, the classical line operates on one of the lowest markups in European heritage perfumery, with cost of goods estimated at 28 to 35% of retail, due to the premium placed on traditional extraction methods. Santa Maria Novella has remained under the operational stewardship of a private consortium of Florentine investors since 2011, with no conglomerate involvement and no documented formula. Changes across the catalog since the most recent ownership transition. And in first place, Enflourage in New York represents the clearest operational proof that genuine raw material integrity can anchor a commercially viable fragrance business without compromise. The house operates a direct procurement model in which founder Trygve Harris travels personally to source regions, including Madagascar, India, and the south of France, to purchase raw materials directly from individual distillers and farmers, rather than through ingredient brokers or commodity exchanges. This eliminates the adulteration risk inherent in multi-step supply chains, where synthetic extenders are routinely introduced between point of harvest and a point of purchase without disclosure to the end manufacturer. Every batch of raw material received at the Manhattan facility is logged with origin, documentation, harvest date, and distillation method before it enters production. At a retail price of $85 to $240 per 15 milliliters for its natural perfume line, the cost of goods runs at an estimated 35 to 45% of retail, the highest material cost ratio documented among any house evaluated for this list. The house offers no lifetime guarantee and carries no heritage prestige from a century of marketing. What it carries instead is a supply chain with fewer steps between the lavender field and the bottle than any other producer operating at commercial scale. In an industry structured to obscure ingredient origins behind brand mythology, Enflourage makes the sourcing the product. That is not a positioning strategy. It is a financial commitment to the premise that the material, i.e., a self, not the bottle or the heritage story or the celebrity endorsement, is the only thing that justified the purchase in the first place. Across all 7 brands, one fact stands out. Trust in fragrance now demands documentation, not storytelling. Only those with verified sourcing, stable ownership, and honest material costs earn the price tag permanently attached to their bottles. Durability of formula is rare and skepticism of heritage is essential. In perfumery, credibility is earned in the distillation room, not the marketing department.